You are at a restaurant. A brown bottle wrapped in paper is set down beside the plate. Almost everyone recognizes it, yet many people still hesitate when it is time to say the name out loud: Worcestershire sauce. It looks like a minor condiment, but behind that bottle is one of the strangest journeys in food history. This is a sauce that once seemed like a failure, and yet it became one of the world's most trusted secret ingredients. So how did something that once tasted wrong become so widely valued, and why can just a few drops make food taste better? Let's get into it right here on Secrets of Simple Things. A sauce that rarely takes the spotlight. Worcestershire sauce is a fermented liquid condiment, dark brown, fairly thin, and strangely difficult to describe in one neat phrase. It can taste tangy, salty, faintly sweet, savory, and a little mysterious all at once. The flavor does not arrive in clear layers. It feels blended. That quietness is part of what makes it useful. People do not usually eat Worcestershire sauce the way they eat ketchup, mustard, or a dipping sauce. It shows up in smaller ways: on steak, in a Bloody Mary, through a sauce, a marinade, a soup, even in grilled cheese or macaroni and cheese. It is rarely the star. Instead, it makes other flavors feel deeper and brighter. And that quiet role makes its beginning even stranger. The batch that seemed like a failure. The story begins in Worcester, England in 1835, not in a famous kitchen but in a small chemist's shop run by John Wheely Lee and William Henry Perrins. They were pharmacists, not chefs. A nobleman who had traveled in India asked them to recreate a sauce he had tasted abroad. Leah and Perrins agreed to try. They gathered vinegar, molasses, anchovies, tamarind, garlic, onion, sugar, salt, and spices. On paper, it may have sounded promising. In practice, it was a mess. When they tasted it, the result was harsh, crowded, and disappointing. It was too sharp, too strong, too unresolved. Nothing felt balanced. Instead of tasting rich or layered, it tasted as though several aggressive ingredients had been pushed together before they had learned how to live in the same place. It did not seem like a near success. It seemed like a failure. So they set it aside. A barrel of the sauce was placed in the cellar and forgotten. That is what makes the beginning of Worcestershire sauce so strange. It did not arrive with instant brilliance. It began as something that could easily have disappeared without leaving any trace at all. But the real story did not happen when they made the sauce. It happened when they stopped paying attention to it. What time repaired in the dark? About 18 months later, while clearing out the cellar, they found that old barrel again. By then, it was little more than a failed experiment taking up space. But before they tossed it, curiosity interrupted the ending. They opened it. What met them was no longer the same sauce. The smell had changed first. It was no longer raw and hostile. It had become deeper and calmer. Then they tasted it, and the transformation became even clearer. The sharp edges had softened. The sourness no longer attacked everything around it. The ingredients that once seemed disconnected had begun to merge. What had tasted rough and wrong now felt balanced, dark, and complete. That is the turning point in the story. Nothing new had been added. No clever final technique rescued the batch. Time had done the work. In the quiet of the cellar, the sauce had slowly become something else. Once that happens, a new question naturally follows. What exactly changed, and why does the finished sauce taste so distinctive? A flavor that is hard to name, but easy to notice. Part of what makes Worcestershire sauce so distinctive is that it never belongs fully to one side of taste. It is sweet from molasses and sugar, sour from vinegar and tamarind, salty and deeply savory from anchovies, and sometimes faintly bitter from the spices behind it. All of those notes arrive close together, which is why the sauce can feel so hard to name. It does not taste like ketchup, soy sauce, or a hot sauce. Instead, it creates a depth that feels complete before it feels easy to explain. That is why Worcestershire sauce works so well in small amounts. A few drops rarely make a dish taste strongly of Worcestershire sauce itself. What they do is subtler and more useful. Beef tastes beefier. Tomato sauce feels brighter. Grilled food gains depth. A glaze feels more balanced. The sauce does not try to dominate. It works underneath everything else, quietly making other flavors stand out more clearly. And that effect becomes easier to understand once you look not just at the flavor, but at the way the sauce is made. Built less by ingredients than by weighting. The ingredients matter, but the ingredient list alone does not explain Worcestershire sauce. Vinegar, molasses, sugar, salt, anchovies, tamarind, onion, garlic, and spices can tell you what goes into it, but not why it tastes the way it does. The real answer lies in fermentation and time. Anchovies are layered with salt and left to ferment for months. During that slow process, proteins break down, releasing amino acids and glutamates, the compounds that help create the deep savory quality people call umami. Meanwhile, onions and garlic are chopped, tamarind is soaked for its pulp, spices are toasted and ground, and everything is mixed with vinegar and molasses into a thick, dark liquid. Then comes the step that matters most. The mixture is left to age, traditionally in large wooden barrels, for a long stretch of time. As it sits, the sharpness eases. The sweetness grows less simple. The spices stop jumping out one by one. Flavors that once seemed crowded begin to settle into each other. The sauce becomes rounder, darker, and more unified. Only after that waiting does it reach the balance people associate with the finished bottle on the table. Then it can be filtered, bottled, wrapped in its signature paper, and sent out into the world. Some flavors cannot be rushed. Worcestershire sauce needs time before it can become fully itself. Once a sauce like that exists, it rarely stays in one place for long. One sauce, many lives. Once Worcestershire sauce began to be bottled and sold, it did not stay in Worcester for long. Leah and Perrins were bottling it by 1837, and within the following decades, it moved beyond the city, beyond England, and out into the wider world. That paper-wrapped bottle became recognizable while the exact recipe remained secret. As the sauce traveled, it stopped belonging to only one table and one tradition. Even between Britain and the United States, it developed a slightly different character, with British versions often feeling earthier because of malt vinegar and American ones sharper because of distilled white vinegar. Elsewhere, people adapted the idea further. In Japan, related sauces often lean sweeter and milder, sometimes drawing more from soy sauce than from anchovies. In Mexico, Worcestershire found its way into micheladas and marinades. A food may begin in one place, but once it enters daily cooking, it starts to live more than one life. And nowhere does that feel more surprising than in the place where this sauce stopped being a curiosity and became part of ordinary eating. The country that made it feel ordinary. One of the most surprising chapters in the story of Worcestershire sauce appears far from England, in El Salvador. There, the sauce did not remain a foreign curiosity or an occasional specialty. It became ordinary. People used it often enough that it simply belonged on the table. By the mid-1990s, El Salvador was reported to have the highest per capita consumption in the world, an astonishing figure for something usually used by the dash. In El Salvador, Worcestershire sauce could go onto eggs, rice, beans, soups, and grilled meats, not as a dramatic flourish, but as part of everyday eating. No one is completely sure why it took root so strongly there. Perhaps British trade routes helped carry it in. Whatever the path, the result is what matters. Many foods travel widely and still feel imported wherever they go. Worcestershire sauce did something more complete. In places like El Salvador, it was adopted, woven into routine, and given a second home. A sauce flexible enough to change without disappearing. Traditional Worcestershire sauce is built around anchovies, which help give it that unmistakable savory depth. But over time, the sauce has also taken on other forms. Vegetarian and vegan versions now exist, using ingredients like mushrooms, tamari, or other umami-rich bases to recreate the same kind of balance and fullness. That matters because it shows that Worcestershire sauce is not defined only by one rigid formula. Its identity also lives in what it does. It adds depth, It sharpens balance. It helps food feel rounder. In that sense, it is a sauce with a clear character, but also enough flexibility to keep living in new forms without disappearing. More than a condiment, changed by time. So we return to that brown paper-wrapped bottle sitting quietly beside the plate. From the outside, it does not seem like much, but behind it is a failed experiment, a forgotten stretch of time in a cellar, a slow transformation through fermentation, a secret recipe, a journey far beyond England, and a second life on tables in places very far from where it began. Worcestershire sauce is not remarkable because it is loud or easy to identify. It is remarkable because it works so quietly, it rarely takes center stage, yet it keeps making other things taste fuller, deeper, and more complete. And maybe that is the most memorable part of its story. Sometimes the thing that gives a meal its final depth is the thing least likely to stand at the center. If you've used Worcestershire sauce before, did you always know it was made with fish, or did that surprise you at some point? Share your answer in the comments. And if you enjoy these quiet stories hidden inside everyday foods, subscribe for the next small secret.